I'm not the kind of guy who raises his voice. I don't slam doors or punch walls, and I don't make threats I don't intend to keep. I'm Timothy Mercer, 42 years old, born in Dayton, Ohio, and raised to believe in two things: hard work and keeping your promises. You marry a woman, you stick to it. That was the rule. I built my life on it, until it crumbled under my feet. Deborah and I had been married 13 years when this story began, and if you had asked me 6 months ago, I'd have said we were fine. Not perfect, but fine. You'd hear that a lot from guys like me. The lawn gets mowed, the mortgage gets paid, and nobody's throwing dishes. Fine. I manage a hardware store, second-generation business, nothing glamorous, but it pays well enough, and I know how to run it. Deborah worked at the community college in admissions, one of those polite desk jobs where everyone speaks in hushed tones and drinks chamomile tea. We lived in a 2-story colonial in Kettering, right at the edge of a cul-de-sac. Good schools, decent neighbors, nothing to complain about. We had our routines, grocery runs on Sundays, movie night every other Friday, and our daughter Molly, 10 years old and smarter than both of us combined. Things shifted slowly, like furniture being dragged an inch at a time in the dark. You don't notice it until you stub your toe. At first, it was small stuff. Deborah started bringing her laptop to bed. She'd scroll through spreadsheets and say she was catching up. That's what she always called it, catching up. With what? I don't know. She didn't seem behind on anything. Then she'd fall asleep with the screen still open, facing away from me. I stopped asking. We used to talk at night. About our days, about Molly, about random things like what kind of dog we'd get if we ever got one. Lately, that space had been filled with silence, the kind you don't know how to interrupt without making it worse. I'd try little things, leave her a note in her lunchbox, bring home her favorite licorice from the gas station, but I'd just get a distracted smile or a thanks without eye contact. It's amazing how fast you can vanish from a person's radar while standing right in front of them. But the real kicker came in the form of a Thursday night trivia game at the local VFW. Nothing scandalous. Our buddy Nate had been nagging me for months to come out. Said I needed guy time, which felt like something out of a midlife crisis pamphlet, but I went anyway. Figured I'd be home by 10. Turns out Deborah wasn't expecting me home until after 11. The house was dark, which made sense. Molly was sleeping over at her friend's house, and I figured Deborah was asleep. But when I walked into the kitchen, something odd struck me: a second wine glass on the counter. Still had red wine in it. That wouldn't have meant much on its own if not for the fact that I saw a pair of men's sunglasses on the kitchen island. Definitely not mine. I stood there staring at them for a good 30 seconds. It's not like a pair of sunglasses is some smoking gun, but it felt wrong. Like someone had been here who wasn't supposed to be. I picked them up, aviators, with a scratch down the right lens. Deborah didn't know anyone who wore those. Not as far as I knew. She came down a minute later, already in pajamas, but with her earrings still in. Big ones, the kind she only wears to work or dinners. She stopped when she saw me. "Oh," she said, too flat. "You're home early." "Trivia ended early," I replied, setting the sunglasses back on the counter. "Company." She paused. That brief flicker of calculation crossed her face. If I'd blinked, I'd have missed it. "No, just me," she said. "I was catching up on paperwork." Right. The classic paperwork and sunglasses scenario. I didn't push. I didn't want to fight. That's the thing. You think when the signs come, you'll be ready. You'll storm out or scream or throw something. But real betrayal doesn't hit like a bomb. It leaks in like water under a door, quiet, steady, and hard to stop. The next morning, the sunglasses were gone. Now, here's the thing. I didn't go full detective mode. I didn't check her phone, didn't plant cameras, didn't follow her around town. That's not who I am. But I did start paying attention. And when you really start looking, you see more than you want to. She started wearing perfume again. That musky one she stopped using years ago because it gave her migraines. She laughed at texts that she didn't show me. She stopped kissing me goodnight. And then came the new password on her laptop. The one she kept open on the counter, angled toward her, like I'd suddenly become untrustworthy. I asked about it once. She said it was because of student records. FERPA stuff, she called it. Okay. I didn't argue. I'm a grown man. If I have to ask my wife for permission to access my own kitchen counter, we've got problems. I confided in Nate. Just the basics. Told him I thought something was off. "You think she's cheating?" he asked, more direct than I wanted. I shrugged. I don't want to go there. Not without something real. He looked at me the way you look at a dog with a limp. Sympathetic, but not optimistic. You ever think maybe you already have something real? I didn't answer him. I couldn't. Then came the business card. It was wedged in a book on the coffee table. One of Deborah's dry psychology reads about adolescent behavior or emotional wellness or whatever. I picked it up to move it and out slid a little white rectangle. Robert Enfield, Student Services, Lakehurst Community College. No big deal, right? Except that I'd never heard that name. And Deborah had never mentioned anyone named Robert. But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the note scribbled on the back in rushed blue ink. Thanks for the night. Let's do it again soon. No name. No date. Just that. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I folded it in half and slid it into my wallet. Here's what you need to understand about me. I'm not explosive. I'm deliberate. And when I decide something, I don't backpedal. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse her. I kissed Molly goodnight, told Deborah I had a long day at work, and went to bed. But I didn't sleep. Instead, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, thinking through every moment of the past year. Every catching up excuse, every canceled date night, every cold shoulder and late return from work. By morning, I had made a decision. I was going to find out the truth. Not in the obvious way. I wasn't going to snoop through her phone or follow her car. No, that's what people expect you to do. That's what she was ready for. I had a better plan, one she wouldn't see coming. Because if she was going to lie to my face, I was going to make sure I knew exactly how deep that lie went. And when the truth came out, because it always does, I'd be ready, not just to hear it, but to make sure she remembered it for the rest of her life. 3 weeks after I found that card, I knew more about Robert Enfield than his own barber probably did. Turns out, Robert goes by Rob. The people he's trying to impress, is 38, divorced, and runs the Student Success Center at the college. Sleek hair, always in those slim-fit shirts that scream midlife crisis, and he drives a leased Lexus that he parks in the corner spot closest to the admin building. Real big man on campus energy, the kind of guy who talks about emotional intelligence, but hasn't returned his mother's calls since Christmas. I didn't go digging through Deborah's emails or setting up hidden cameras. Like I said before, I'm not that guy. I prefer smarter routes. Indirect ones. So when my buddy Jake, old high school friend, now a freelance graphic designer with a caffeine addiction and zero tact, offered to help me get the scoop, I took him up on it. Jake's girlfriend used to do contract work for the college. Still had contacts. A week later, he texted me a screenshot from LinkedIn. Robert Enfield, helping students navigate their future with compassion, humor, and guidance. Jake captioned it, "This guy looks like he cries after TED Talks." I cracked a smile, but only for a second. By then, I'd already started doing what I do best, watching patterns. Deborah's Tuesday and Thursday evenings got longer. Late appointments, she'd say. There's been a ton of student issues this semester. Sure. Except her work laptop never left her desk, and she started packing a change of clothes in her tote bag. When I asked about it, she said she liked having options. She said it like she was talking to a customer at a boutique, not her husband. I stopped asking after that. Instead, I started charting her calendar in my head. I made note of every late night, every unexpected emergency, and every time she came home looking smug. Not happy. Not glowing. Smug. Like she just won a round of chess I didn't know we were playing. Still, I needed proof. Not legal proof. Emotional proof. Something irrefutable. Something that wouldn't just confirm it, but show me exactly who she became when I wasn't around. That's when it hit me. Deborah and I shared a Dropbox account. It was an old setup from years back when we were syncing baby photos from Molly's scrapbook. She barely used it anymore. I hadn't even thought about it until I needed a place to store some plumbing invoices. And lo and behold, there it was, still linked to her laptop. She must have forgotten it. Or maybe she figured I wouldn't care. I didn't dig. I didn't look through her files. But I noticed something. The usage history showed recent uploads. JPEGs. PDFs. A few videos. My gut clenched. I clicked on the most recent folder. It was named Fall Enrollment Notes. That alone almost made me laugh. These people think renaming a folder hides anything. That's like hiding your cash in a cereal box and calling it fiber goals. I opened it. Photos. Lots of them. But not of students. Not of lecture halls or spreadsheets. Selfies. Deborah. In a car. Different angles. Filtered lighting. Sometimes with the window down. One of them had her holding a smoothie. Real candid stuff. Except there was one thing off. She was never alone. In the mirror reflection of the window in one, you could see the corner of Rob's face. Sunglasses. Same scratch across the lens. And his hand? Resting on her thigh. The picture was cropped close, but not close enough. I sat there for a while just staring at the screen. There it was. Not a text. Not a rumor. Not some blurry security cam footage. Just two people who didn't know, or didn't care, that their reflection was louder than anything they could say. I didn't save the photos. I didn't download them. I didn't need to. They were burned into my brain like a bad tattoo. But what came next? That's where things got interesting. A few days later, Deborah mentioned the college was hosting an open house for community partners. Said they were inviting local business owners and vendors to see the campus, maybe collaborate. You should come, she said casually, like she was inviting me to a picnic. Might be good for your store to sponsor something. I almost laughed out loud. I'll think about it, I said. But inside, I'd already RSVP'd yes. I showed up that Thursday night in a clean button-down and jeans. Nothing flashy, just regular dad gear. I brought along a few store flyers, played the role, and walked the hallways like a curious local vendor. And there he was, Rob, standing by the refreshments table, talking to someone half his age, holding a plastic cup like it was a champagne flute. Deborah was 2 feet away, laughing too loudly at something he said. She hadn't seen me yet, so I walked right up. She turned, startled. Tim, you made it, she said. Smile too wide, eyes too alert. Thought I'd come see what all the student issues are about, I replied. Rob extended his hand, too smooth. You must be Deborah's husband. Must be. What a phrase. Like I was a theory. That's me, I said, gripping his hand just a hair longer than necessary. And you're the guy helping all these confused young adults find their paths? He chuckled like I'd made a joke. That's the idea. Deborah shifted uncomfortably. Her eyes darted toward Rob like she was checking for a crack in the glass. I let them squirm for a moment, then turned to look around the room. Nice turnout. Do these halls always smell like ambition and cheap cologne? Rob laughed again, this time more uncertain. Deborah cut in. Tim, why don't I show you the new advising wing? Sure, I said. Lead the way. She steered me down a quiet hallway, her heels clicking too fast, her breath short. When we were out of earshot, she turned. What are you doing here? You invited me. Yeah, but I didn't think you'd actually come. Right. Because I've become so predictable lately. She swallowed. Her mouth opened to say something, then closed. We stood in silence. I know about him, I said finally. Her jaw tightened. What? I know, Deborah. I saw the photos. The sunglasses. The hand. You know, the kind of things friends don't usually do. She looked away. Didn't deny it. Didn't even flinch. What are you doing with a guy like that? I asked. You needed a midlife sabbatical? Her voice was flat. It's not like that. I almost admired the nerve it took to say that with a straight face. I don't care what it's like anymore, I said. I'm not here to beg or bargain. Then what are you here for? I smiled. To see the look on your face when you realize the game's up. She opened her mouth again, but I walked off before she could say anything. I didn't need a scene. I didn't need tears or excuses or whatever version of the truth she thought I could swallow. I just needed confirmation. And now I had it. Because there's one thing cheaters never prepare for. When you don't confront them with rage, you confront them with a plan. And mine? Mine was just getting started. You know that feeling when you've already made the decision, but you haven't told the other person yet? That strange calm that hits once the fog of doubt clears and you're staring directly at the truth? That was me, waking up Saturday morning, staring at the ceiling, thinking, this marriage is dead. I'm just waiting for the burial. Deborah hadn't said a word about our little hallway talk at the college. Not that night. Not the next morning. She did what she always does when she's cornered. She compartmentalized. She went to bed early, claiming she had a migraine, and in the morning she was all smiles and scrambled eggs, like we hadn't just ripped the curtain off her second life. I didn't confront her that weekend. I didn't storm around the house or demand confessions. I went about my business. I mowed the lawn, cleaned the gutters, took Molly to her swim meet like any regular dad whose wife isn't sleeping with her coworker behind his back. That's the trick. You make the silence do the heavy lifting. You let it dig under their skin until they start to itch from the inside out. By Monday, Deborah was the one cracking. She called me at work around noon. I was in the back sorting through a busted shipment of socket wrenches when my phone buzzed. Her name popped up on the screen, and I just stared at it for a second before answering. Yeah. Hey, she said, voice unusually careful. You busy? Always. Long pause. Then, can we talk tonight? I waited just long enough to make it uncomfortable. Sure. That was all she got. I came home around 6. She was already sitting in the living room, cross-legged on the couch, not a screen in sight. The TV was off. Her phone was face down on the coffee table. That alone told me she was trying to stage some kind of sincerity. I hung my keys on the wall hook, kicked off my boots, and stood there for a second. Molly's at Emma's, she said quickly. Sleep over. Of course she was. Deborah always makes sure the witness is out of the room before the show starts. I sat down in the armchair across from her. Didn't lean forward. Didn't soften my face. Just waited. She fidgeted with a pillow on her lap. I wanted to clear the air. I let her talk. That's how this works. I know things have been different lately, she began, sounding like someone giving a vague apology at a staff meeting. And I know you're upset. About what you saw. About Robert. Rob, I corrected, just to see her twitch. She did. Barely. Right. Rob. She looked down at her hands. It wasn't supposed to be anything. It just sort of happened. We worked together. We spent time together. Spare me, I said. Please don't insult both of us by pretending this was an accident. Her lips pressed together. The act was slipping. I'm not saying it's okay, she said. I felt disconnected. Like we weren't even trying anymore. There it was. The classic shift. You drove me to this angle. Cheaters 101. So your solution was to connect with someone who signs your timesheets? Her eyes flared for half a second. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I just don't buy it. She crossed her arms, defensive now. You never listened, Tim. You haven't listened to me in years. That made me laugh. Out loud. That's rich. Really? You think this is about me not listening? She stood up, suddenly pacing. You work. You come home. You fall asleep on the couch. You're present, but you're not there. I felt invisible for so long I forgot what it felt like to be noticed. Noticed? I repeated. Deborah, you're a grown woman, not a high school prom queen. Needing to feel noticed is not a justification for blowing up your family. Don't do that, she snapped. Don't paint me like some reckless kid. I don't have to. You're doing a fine job on your own. She stopped pacing and turned to face me. So what do you want, Tim? You want me to beg? To cry? To promise I'll never see him again? No, I said, standing. I want you to answer one question. She froze. What? I stepped closer, leveled my voice. Did you ever plan to tell me? Or were you just going to let this ride until I caught you in bed with him? Her mouth opened. Closed. No sound came out. There it was. The silence. That sacred, ugly truth that sits between liars. You know, I said, stepping past her, it's not the betrayal that stings. It's the fact that you thought I was too stupid to notice. I never thought that. Don't lie again. Not tonight. I can handle the affair. I can handle that you found some smug desk jockey who makes you feel alive or whatever fantasy you've built. What I can't stomach is the idea that you thought I'd just keep walking around this house like some blind, dumb appliance. Her voice dropped, quiet now. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water, mostly to keep from punching the fridge. She followed. So what now? That's what she wanted. A roadmap. A guide to navigating the wreckage she caused. I took a sip, set the glass down, and looked at her like I'd never seen her before. You tell me. You already made the choice. I'm just catching up. She looked at me like she wanted to cry. But she didn't. Because deep down, she still didn't believe this was real. Not yet. You want me to move out? She asked. No, I said. I want you to stay right here. I want you to live in the mess you made. I want you to wake up every day in the bed you poisoned and pretend like it's still yours. She blinked, clearly confused. Why? Because leaving now would make it too easy for you. And I'm not interested in easy anymore. I turned, headed upstairs, and left her standing in the kitchen with her arms folded like a kid who just got caught sneaking out past curfew. And here's the kicker. The next morning, she made pancakes. Pancakes. As if that erases anything. As if the smell of maple syrup can smooth over the stench of betrayal. I ate them. Every bite. Said thanks. Washed my dish. And went out to the garage, where I started building what came next. You see, when you give a man time, and space, and clarity, he stops hurting. And he starts planning. She didn't know it yet. But Deborah was about to find out what it feels like to be outmaneuvered by the husband she thought was too slow to catch up. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was the setup. And I was just getting warmed up. The Monday after our little confrontation, Deborah left the house at 7:15 sharp. Hair curled. Neutral blazer. Same lipstick shade she always uses when she wants to appear professional yet approachable. I watched her from the upstairs window as she got in her car and backed out like she wasn't dragging a crater behind her. She still thought she was ahead. I'd let her. Revenge isn't rage. It's choreography. And I wasn't about to trip over my own feet. Let me back up. A week earlier, I'd filed for a post office box under a business alias, T&M Services, LLC. Stood for Timothy and Molly, but it might as well have stood for Total Mayhem. I made a couple of Craigslist purchases, paid for some letterhead printing, and pulled the most beautiful con I've ever devised, legally clean, emotionally precise, and built for maximum embarrassment. I started by contacting the college's continuing ed department. Told them I ran a local hardware business and was looking to sponsor a small grant for non-traditional students entering skilled trades. No big splash, just a few $100 and a note of appreciation. They were thrilled. Said they'd pass it up to student services for coordination. Guess who that filtered up to? Robert. Or Rob, if we're pretending he still has a personality that isn't copy-pasted from a Hallmark movie side character. 2 days later, I get an email addressed to Mr. Mercer because I was using a second email, of course, from, Rob Infield himself. Friendly, polished, and with just enough flattery to make me feel like his favorite local businessman. Perfect. I arranged a meeting. Told him I'd meet on campus in his office, after hours, Wednesday at 6 p.m. Said I worked long shifts, but wanted to contribute to the student body because, and I quote, my own daughter's going to be walking these halls in a few years. That part was true, and it gave the whole thing the exact tinge of sincerity I wanted him to believe. Wednesday comes. I show up at his office in an old flannel shirt, clipboard under my arm, looking like someone who just walked off a job site. He shakes my hand with that managerial squeeze. The guy looked like he moisturizes daily but hasn't changed a flat tire in his life. We sit. He offers water. I decline. Then we talk shop. I let him blabber on about student engagement and empowering transitions and whatever else he pulled from his latest training module. I nod along, sprinkle in a few ahas, and eventually slide a document across the table. It's a fake grant letter, beautifully formatted. Says T&M Services will be awarding a quarterly stipend to deserving faculty members who go above and beyond for student well-being. He lights up. Faculty too? Sure, I say. Sometimes, the real heroes don't wear capes. They wear lanyards. He laughs like I've just invented the wheel. But, I add, we've had problems in the past with inappropriate use of funds. So before we award anything, we need a short nominee profile, nothing fancy. Just a paragraph and a recent photo of the nominee in a campus setting. So we can present them properly. He nods enthusiastically. We have a few standouts this semester. I can absolutely put that together. I'd appreciate it, I say, rising. Make sure you CC your dean. Transparency and all. He nods, already halfway to his keyboard. That was Wednesday. By Friday, I had it. An email from Rob, sent from his college account, with an attached PDF titled nominee_Infield_2025.pdf. The file? A one-page brag sheet. Talked about his student-first philosophy, his open-door policy, his commitment to ethical mentoring. And at the bottom, a photo. Not a headshot. Not a classroom pic, but a selfie taken in his office, Deborah standing next to him, holding a cup of coffee, both of them smiling like a pair of smug talk show hosts. He'd captioned it, with my colleague Deborah Mercer, an incredible support in everything we do here. And that was gold. Now, before you wonder why he'd submit that, here's what you need to understand about guys like Rob. They always think the rules don't apply to them. They believe they're admired, envied, untouchable. Throw in the fact that Deborah probably fed him some tale about how her husband's emotionally distant, and you've got a man who's confident enough to attach his mistress to a grant submission. And me? I was about to broadcast that confidence to a front row of people who'd care. Saturday night was Deborah's departmental dinner. Semi-formal. Hosted in the school's events hall. I wasn't originally invited. Apparently, spouses weren't expected. But once I saw that PDF, I asked her about it. You think I should come this year? I asked casually over dinner. She blinked, caught off guard. Sure. If you want. Could be fun. Meet your coworkers. Shake some hands. Yeah, she said slowly. Sure. You could see her mentally reworking the guest list in her head. I wore a charcoal gray button-down and black jeans, respectable, not flashy. I brought a bottle of wine, printed out the fake grant packet on heavy stock paper, and casually slipped it into a manila folder labeled Event Materials. We arrived just before 7. The usual crowd, professors in sport coats, admin ladies in chunky necklaces, some guy from IT who looked like he still lived with his parents. Deborah schmoozed as we walked, hand on my arm, guiding me through introductions. Then we reached him. Rob. He shook my hand like we'd never met. Smart move. I followed suit. Good to meet you, I said. You too. I've heard great things. I bet. He laughed awkwardly. Deborah shifted next to me, tense. 10 minutes later, I excused myself and headed to the event coordinator table. Found the young woman running the slideshow. Told her I had one more visual for the rotation. Said it was for the donor slide at the end. She took my flash drive without blinking. Should loop right after the thank yous, I told her. About a minute long. I watched her copy it over. The video? A still frame of that PDF. Text at the top. Upcoming Faculty Excellence nominee. Then the photo. Rob and Deborah, arm in arm, smiling like idiots. Underneath, a single quote pulled from Rob's profile. Sometimes, real mentoring happens outside the classroom. It played at 8:47 p.m., right after the dean gave her closing remarks. Lights dimmed, slideshow looped, polite applause, and then boom. There they were. In front of 40 faculty and staff. In front of the dean. In front of Deborah's own boss, who turned and gave her a look like he'd just tasted spoiled milk. I stood in the back, arms crossed, watching Deborah's face freeze mid-conversation. Rob was across the room, too far to intercept it in time. The room got awkward quiet. People shifted in their chairs. The slide stayed up for a full 40 seconds before the next one kicked in, some bland logo thanking local businesses. But the damage was done. Deborah caught my eyes across the room. Her expression said it all. Panic. She crossed over fast, her voice low and sharp. What did you do? I tilted my head. I sponsored a grant. Just doing my part. She glanced around. You set us up. I leaned in. No. You set yourselves up. I just brought the projector. She opened her mouth, but I walked away before she could spit whatever excuse she had loaded. On the way out, I tipped the wine server and shook hands with the dean. Glad to support good people, I told him. He nodded, confused but polite. Back home, Deborah came in an hour later. Didn't say a word. Just stood in the doorway like she was trying to figure out if this was real life or some dream she could still wake up from. It wasn't. I looked up from my chair. You know what's funny? I said. What? You wanted me to feel small. Replaceable. Boring. But now? You're the one explaining things to people you can't lie to. She crossed her arms. You humiliated me. I smiled. You humiliated yourself. I just gave it a venue. She left the room. Not because she was angry. Because she had no answer. She thought she picked the smarter man. She didn't. She picked the one dumb enough to leave his mistress's husband holding the microphone. And I wasn't done talking. 3 days after the slideshow incident, Deborah finally broke the silence. It was a Tuesday. I was at the kitchen table balancing invoices for the store, sipping cold coffee, and pretending she didn't exist. She walked in like someone gearing up to fire an employee, back straight, lips tight, that same stiff grace she uses when trying to control the uncontrollable. Tim, she said, quiet. Almost rehearsed. We need to talk. I didn't look up right away. I flipped to the next invoice, took another sip, let her sit in the tension. Then I set my pen down and met her eyes. Do we? She blinked. Yes. I leaned back, arms folded. All right then. Talk. She took a breath, stepped closer, and pulled out the chair across from me. Sat down, careful and slow like she was afraid of cracking something fragile between us. That's always how she operated, controlled detonation. Never full honesty. Just a slow leak of half-truths until she could deny the rest. I know you're angry, she began. Nope, I interrupted. Wrong emotion. Try again. She hesitated. Embarrassed? Not for me. That one stung. She flinched but recovered. Then what? I'm disappointed, I said flatly. Not just in what you did, but in how boring it all was. She looked confused. Boring. You had an affair. With a coworker. A divorced, mid-level, middle-aged campus cliché. Do you know how pedestrian that is? I mean, really. If you're gonna torpedo a marriage, you could at least do it with flair. This isn't a joke, Tim. I'm not laughing. A pause. Then her voice softened. I didn't plan for it to go this far. Let me ask you something, I said. When you were standing in his office, sipping your little coffee, posing for that picture, did you feel clever? Did it feel like a secret victory? Or were you just numb to how pathetic it all looked? That photo wasn't. Don't. I cut in. Don't lie. Not now. She dropped her gaze. I didn't think it would come out like that. Because you thought I wouldn't notice. That's the part one can't get past. You looked me in the face, for months, and played dumb. All while knowing you'd already swapped me out like a worn tire. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Deborah? Enlighten me. Because the way I see it, you wanted out but didn't want to be the villain. So you made me one in your head. Cold husband, inattentive father, emotionally unavailable. You fed yourself that story until it gave you permission to slip away without guilt. Her jaw tightened. You were checked out, Tim. Admit it. I laughed, sharp and bitter. I was building a life. Keeping a roof over our heads. Paying for swim lessons and car repairs and groceries. Sorry if that didn't feel like a romance novel to you. Her eyes burned now. You stopped seeing me. No, Deborah. You stopped being worth seeing. That landed. I could tell because she looked down at her hands, twisted the wedding ring around her finger, and finally slipped it off. Laid it flat on the table between us like a white flag. I made mistakes, she said. That's not a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to put gas in the car. What you did? That was a series of conscious decisions. She nodded slowly. You're right. Silence again. The kind that clogs the air with every unsaid word we dodged for months. I'm sorry, she said. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry it got messy. If Rob hadn't smiled for the camera like an idiot, you'd still be sneaking around, pretending you're tired all the time. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did. I was confused. No, you were selfish. She stared at me. There it was. The end. Hanging between us like a ceiling fan with a loose screw still spinning, but only because no one's turned off the switch yet. So, she said finally, what happens now? I smiled. Not cruelly. Not with glee. Just a quiet smile. The kind a man wears when he's finally done playing defense. I filed for divorce this morning, I said. Served you at work. Should arrive any minute now. Her face twitched. You're kidding. Nope. Simple, uncontested. Custody arrangement favors me 70/30ths. You get holidays, alternating summers. I'll take care of the house until it sells. After that, you're free to start fresh. New job, new city, new guy. Whatever. She just stared at me. You already filed? I already waited too long. But we haven't even tried it. You weren't trying when it counted. Why should I try now? I thought maybe we could. I don't know. Rebuild. You don't rebuild on rotten wood. She went quiet. Stared at the ring on the table. I never hated you, she said softly. I don't hate you either, I replied. But I can't respect you. And without that, what are we doing? She nodded, almost like she understood. Almost. Then she said the thing I'd been waiting for. What are you going to tell Molly? I leaned forward. The truth. Age appropriate, of course. That sometimes people you love make decisions that disappoint you. That it's okay to be hurt. That it's okay to heal. And that her dad will always be there, no matter what. You'll turn her against me. No. You'll do that all by yourself. I won't even need to help. Her voice cracked. She loves you. And I love her. That's why I won't let her grow up thinking this is normal. Tears welled up in her eyes. I watched them. Felt nothing. It was strange. I used to panic at the thought of her crying. Used to rush to fix whatever I'd said, whatever I'd done. But now? It felt like watching a stranger grieve over a bad investment. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. You can't. We sat in silence. The wall clock ticked like a metronome counting down to the end of something we'd both already abandoned. Finally, she stood up. I guess I'll go stay at Sarah's for now. Fine. She turned to leave, then hesitated at the door. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I looked at her for a long moment. Not the woman she used to be. Not the woman I married. Just Deborah. A person who made her choices. No, I said. But I might forget you eventually. And that's probably worse. She left. Didn't slam the door. Didn't cry. Just walked out. And that was that. The final scene. No music. No credits. Just the quiet settling in, like dust on a shelf. Except this time, I wasn't the one cleaning it up. The first thing I noticed after Deborah left was the silence. Not the kind you dread. The kind that feels earned. For the first time in a long time, I could hear myself think without negotiating space with someone who hadn't been honest with me in months. Molly was at school, the dishwasher was humming, and the living room didn't reek of passive aggression masked as routine. I stood in the kitchen staring at Deborah's coffee mug in the drying rack. One of those novelty ones she picked up from a gift shop in Asheville years ago, queen of everything. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand, and then gently dropped it into the trash. It felt symbolic and surprisingly satisfying. The next few days were a mix of logistics and new rhythms. Divorce isn't romantic. It's not some teary movie montage. It's insurance calls, file folders, attorney consults, and arguments over who gets the blender no one really cares about. I kept it simple. I told the lawyer I didn't want alimony, just a clean break in the primary custody I'd already planned for. Deborah didn't fight. That told me everything I needed to know. She wanted out now that she couldn't control the narrative. She'd lost the image war, and the PR damage in her workplace was enough to make her lie low. I'd heard through the grapevine that Rob had been temporarily reassigned to online-only student services. Translation: they shelved him until the heat cooled off. Deborah started remote work for health reasons. Translation: shame. Fine by me. Let them rot together in their little digital office love bubble. Meanwhile, Molly was adjusting better than I'd feared. We didn't sit her down with the whole "mommy and daddy don't love each other anymore" script. That kind of line insults a kid's intelligence. Instead, I told her something true. Your mom and I made some decisions that don't work anymore. But I'll always be here. That doesn't change. She nodded. Asked a few questions. I answered them as honestly as a 10-year-old needs. Kids are resilient. They're also intuitive. She'd sensed the ice long before it cracked. And the funny thing? She didn't ask to call her mom for 3 days. Not once. Eventually, I suggested it. You want to FaceTime with mom tonight? She paused. Do I have to? No. She went back to her book. That told me more than I wanted to know. By Friday, the silence had stopped feeling like a placeholder. It started to feel like peace. I made real dinners again. Stood over the stove. Seasoned things. Ate slowly. I listened to records I hadn't touched in years. I pulled out a dusty model airplane kit from the garage and actually started building it, one piece at a time, like I used to before life got hijacked by constant emotional triage. Then on Sunday, she showed up. I was in the backyard with Molly, helping her build a birdhouse she'd started painting. We were mid-blue coat when I heard the gate open. Deborah walked in, holding a small box. No warning. No call. Molly saw her first. Mom. Deborah's face lit up like that alone was worth every mistake. Hey, baby, she said. I thought I'd bring by a few of your things. I stood up slowly. The front door would have worked. I didn't want to bother you if you were busy, she said, like this was her college friend's backyard and not her own daughter's. I wiped my hands on a rag. Molly, go wash up. Lunch in 10. She hesitated. It's okay, I said. She went inside. Deborah turned to me. She looks okay. She is. I expected more anger. More sadness. She saw through you faster than I did. That landed. She set the box down on the patio table, hands slightly trembling. I've been thinking, she said. A lot. I'd hope so. I'm not going to ask to come back. I know that ship sunk. Nice of you to recognize it. But I need to say something. Just once. I folded my arms. All right. She looked at me, really looked, and for the first time in months, I saw the edge of someone who used to be honest. I didn't just cheat because I was unhappy. I cheated because I needed someone to tell me I mattered. Not in some cheap, flirty way. In a you're still relevant kind of way. Rob made me feel that. And I was weak enough to need it. And now I know I was replaceable for him the minute it stopped being exciting. I nodded. That tracks. She swallowed. He hasn't talked to me since the dinner. Not really. Just HR statements and awkward glances. I'm not surprised. Guys like that fold the second they lose the spotlight. She winced. I deserve that. You deserve a lot of things. But I'm not the one who gets to hand them out anymore. Silence. Then she asked it. The question I knew would come eventually. Was it ever going to be enough? Me, the house, the life we built? I answered her the only way I could. It was. Until you decided it wasn't. She blinked hard, eyes glossing. But the tears didn't fall. Maybe she was past that part. Or maybe she knew they wouldn't work on me anymore. Tim, she said quietly, will you ever talk to me like you used to? No. Even for Molly's sake? I'll be polite. But that's not the same. She nodded. Looked down. Picked up her purse. She'll probably ask harder questions someday, she said. She will. What will you tell her? I thought about that for a second. I'll tell her you were brave enough to leave when you should have been brave enough to stay and fix what you broke. Deborah flinched, just barely. I wish I'd met you later. I tilted my head. I wish you hadn't pretended to be someone you weren't. And with that, she turned and walked out the gate. No hug. No dramatic goodbye. Just the sound of the latch clicking shut behind her. I went inside. Molly was at the table, eating a sandwich. Was that Mom? She asked. Yeah. She bring my sketchbooks? I grabbed the box and set it on the table. Right here. She rifled through it, pulled out a worn pad, opened it, smiled. Good, she said. This one had my fox drawings. I smiled back. You're getting better at those. Yeah, she said. I want to draw people next. Just make sure you draw ones you can trust, I said without thinking. She looked up at me, then nodded. I will. That night, after she went to bed, I stood in the living room and looked around. No more filtered apologies. No more fake laughter at the dinner table. No more pretending. Just air. And a man who knew exactly who he was again. I poured a whiskey. Sat down in the chair I'd always avoided. The one Deborah used to call too lumpy. It wasn't. It was just mine. And for the first time in years, I leaned back and listened. The quiet? It didn't scare me anymore. It sounded a lot like peace. Subscribe to the channel